My next patron question is from Rushil, who wants to know if I blame Tom Rothman for the critical and commercial failure of Dragon Ball Evolution. This does get into the interesting question of how much a film's quality is affected by the decisions of studio executives. After all, they are frequent examples of movies that were taken from directors and altered against their wishes by the people in charge of the studio or production company. Harvey Weinstein was a particularly infamous example of this. However, there are also cases where executives helped improve a film with their suggestions, which I've discussed before. In the case of Dragon Ball Evolution, let's look at the film itself. I actually did see this movie many years ago, and despite having extremely little familiarity with Dragon Ball, even I could tell this was a botched adaptation that probably was not representative of the source material. 20th Century Fox first acquired the rights to make a live-action Dragon Ball movie in 2002, with plans to make it a big $100 million tentpole. However, during the years it spent in development, the budget started dwindling until reportedly ended up costing $30 million to produce. Interestingly enough, Jackie Chan wanted to make a live-action Dragon Ball movie in the 90s, but decided against it as he felt the special effects required would have made it extremely expensive. But Fox somehow found a way to do it on a smaller budget. Over the years, different parties have placed blame on various people for the quality of the movie. One of the most vocal has been Ben Ramsey, who received sole screenplay credit. In 2016, he took blame for the film, saying that he decided to write the script simply for the paycheck instead of a love for the material, and that he was sorry how the film came about. However, a few years later, he released a different statement saying that he thought he wrote a great script and that had been completely rewritten and changed by other people, and he should not be blamed for how Dragon Ball Evolution came about. Ramsey later gave an interview where he talked about his experiences on the production, how he did a complete deep dive into the Dragon Ball franchise, and sought to write a script that honored and was faithful to the series. However, because of studio notes and other issues, his script was completely altered and diluted and ended up nothing like what he wrote. It's interesting seeing his perspective change, and that interview is worth listening to. Honestly, his experience as a screenwriter on this studio film is not that uncommon. Even if there are only one or two screenwriters credited on the finished film, there'll usually be a lot more hands involved. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is a notable example, as while David Koepp is the only writer credited on the screenplay, several writers were involved in the script, whether it's with shaping the story or providing dialogue, or even suggesting which villains to include. Nowadays, the Writers Guild of America even shows on their website an additional literary material credit for certain movies, revealing which other writers contributed to the script, sometimes even including people who have not been involved in the production in years. It's why in a major studio film, you should never assume every piece of dialogue or action beat was written solely by those with screenplay credit. Usually on those productions, the director, producers, executives, and even editors will have more say on how the finished film comes together than the writers do. Another person who's talked about why Dragon Ball Evolution did not work is Katsuhiko Torishima, who was a longtime editor of the Japanese company that publishes the Dragon Ball manga. He felt they should have invested more money in the film, which would have given them a bigger say in the creative decisions and thus steered it in a better direction. Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, said that while he did offer suggestions to the studio and filmmakers on how to improve the script, he was largely ignored. His dissatisfaction with the film then led him to have much greater involvement in the animated movies produced in Japan. I tried to find if the movie's director, James Wong, has commented on Dragon Ball Evolution since its release, but could only find the interviews he did back in 2009. He did say that when he was offered the job, he was not familiar with Dragon Ball, but he then read the manga and liked it a lot. It's definitely plausible that he found himself working under time and budget constraints and a need to make the film appeal to a broad audience beyond fans of the anime and manga. I remember the movie seemed to try particularly hard to target a teenage audience, with Goku attending high school and going to parties. There are probably a lot of ill-fated notes and suggestions from the studio and producers and a bunch of other folks, which led to the film falling apart. I don't know how many of these ideas were Tom Rothman's, although Dragon Ball Evolution does run only 85 minutes. That seems like a short runtime for a movie like this, especially based on such an expansive manga. Rothman did gain a reputation for wanting certain movies to be a specific length to get more showtimes in, which I talked about in my video about his time running 20th Century Fox. I don't know if the 2-hour Dragon Ball Evolution would have fixed the problems, but cutting it down to 1 hour and 25 minutes probably did not help. I think this movie is just a classic example of multiple visions clashing and trying to adapt a beloved property, resulting in a very underwhelming production that satisfied neither longtime fans nor those who have never picked up an issue. Thank you for your question, Rushil.